Hey friends, welcome to a new video here on the LNM channel. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. A lot of you have asked me to create some more tutorial-like videos for Obsidian since I've been sharing a lot about my system. A lot of you are starting with Obsidian, have been intrigued by it, and wanted to see if I would create a tutorial or some informative videos surrounding how to get started with Obsidian and different things. In this video, we are going to be looking at what I would do if I was restarting with Obsidian. And that's going to look at what Obsidian actually is and how it works with the local files on your computer. Some Obsidian terminology. So what is an Obsidian Vault? What are links? What are properties? What is the graph? And then we're also going to look at what the settings, what I would keep the settings as, what settings I would change if I was starting over again, just based off of what I know and what I use in my system. And then we're also going to look at some core plugins and community plugins and which community plugins I think you should download to start off with. And then we're also going to look at folder structure and what my opinion is on how many folders you should create, if you should create any folders. There will be timestamps throughout the video, so if there's any specific topic that you are interested in looking at, that will be available to you. Go ahead and stay until the end of the video, and I'll talk a little bit more about what future videos will look like within this subject. But I figured I would start off with the basic, what is it that I would do if I was starting with Obsidian all over again? For those of you that are just getting started with Obsidian and want a little bit of guidance in terms of how to get started and how to create a vault that will help you flourish instead of create points of friction that can tend to happen when you're first starting with a system like this. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and keep on watching. Okay, so here we are at my vault, and I wanted to start this video with how it is that you would create a brand new vault to begin with. Obviously, we're starting off from my vault, but in your case, you would go ahead and start this page right here, and you would get this option to create a new vault. Now, a lot of you have already created a vault, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I did want to mention it just in case. So you would go ahead and create the vault here, and you would give your vault a name. For the sake of this video, and for any other tutorial videos, I'm going to go ahead and name this the tutorial vault. And I'm going to browse a location in which to put that. So for me, I have a folder on my desktop called Obsidian where I house any of the vaults that I am utilizing. You can kind of see my vault here and then a couple of Ideaverse vaults. This is from Nick Milo. He does have the option to download these if you join his newsletter. I will leave a link down to that for you guys to check it out if you're interested. It's a really great way to be able to see a actual vault and how someone has it set up. So definitely recommend that. But we're going to go ahead and click create. Now, you can see here, if you're using iCloud Drive, your documents and desktop folders might be synced by iCloud. This could cause conflicts with Obsidian Sync. I wanted to mention that because you could have this on a local computer, which is what I do, and I have Obsidian Sync to be able to use it on different devices, or you can save this on a cloud-based service such as iCloud or Google Drive or Dropbox, and then be able to sync that way. I did start off doing that, but ended up going to sync instead. So I don't have much knowledge on how it would work if you're using it based off of a cloud, but there's definitely videos out there. So check that out if that's something that you would be interested. But in our use case right now, we're just going to keep it local. Go ahead and hit create. Now, as you can see here, this is what happens. This is immediately what opens up if you get once you create a new vault. You have a welcome note, you have your graph view, and you have a welcome note. So before we even get into some other things, I wanted to talk about Obsidian terminology. So what is a vault? Essentially, a vault is just this is a view of your folders. So I wanted to show you, in essence, what it is that Obsidian does. What you have, you can kind of see here, this is my vault, CMXEV second brain. You can kind of see that here. And if I click into this, you'll see exactly what you're seeing here. The plus inbox folder, the Zettelkasten folder, the NIM folder, physical collections, reference, calendar, etc. You have the Excalibrain note, the idea log, the start here dashboard. So it's basically just a viewfinder, if you will. If I go over here into my inbox, go here into my inbox, you'll see it's the same exact folders. Your books read database, the index card system, Obsidian terminology, writing original works. It's the same exact thing. So that's what we mean when we say vault. Your vault is just using the Obsidian platform to create and store local files. That's one of the things that I really love about Obsidian versus something like Notion where things just exist on a cloud. These are yours. And if you have it locally, only you have access to this. The other day I was reading a blog post or a newsletter by Nick Milo. A constant thing that's being talked about is that we don't know, there's no way of knowing how many users actually use Obsidian because it's so local. You could download the application, and if you don't use Sync or if you don't pay for it, a Catalyst, you don't, it's free, right? If you don't use Sync, it's absolutely free. So no one would know if you're using it. So that's really powerful. Um, but that's essentially what the Vault is. And I wanted just to showcase that before we went any further than that. So that's one aspect that I wanted to talk about. So that's the first thing I wanted to tell you guys is how the Vault actually works and how really cool it is. What I end up doing for like backup files is I will just um, compress it and move that into my Dropbox just to have backup files. Going back to our tutorial vault, the next thing I wanted to mention is links. So when we talk about links in Obsidian, which is what's really, really cool, is this idea that you can connect your notes together. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and right click over here on the sidebar and create a new note and call this welcome again. And then I'm going to call this goodbye. So I have a couple of notes here. I'm going to close this graph view for now so it's not distracting. So by itself, I'm going to delete this note here. Delete that. If I go into the note, welcome again, and say, welcome, welcome again. This is a completely random little thing, but welcome again. And then I go in here and I open up a bracket, 2 brackets. You'll see that there's this thing that comes up. This is the autocomplete function in Obsidian, which is a very, very powerful tool. It basically, as soon as you open up these double brackets, will show you a list of your notes that you have. And as you start typing, it'll filter them out. So for example, right now we only have 2 notes, so it's very easy to pick one. But let's say I start writing G, right? Okay, goodbye now suddenly is the first one. And then if I keep writing, okay, goodbye is the only one here, right? So let's say I click into this, welcome, welcome again, goodbye. Now, if I click into this link, it will take me to the note. And so now this note links to this note. And that is in essence how you link notes together. And of course, you can link them so that they are speaking to each other. So goodbye, and then hello, welcome again. And so now I can go into each of these notes forevermore, right? I don't have to use this sidebar at all. If I wanted to just close this or collapse it, I don't need to because I have another form of navigation through my notes, which is, again, one of the really powerful parts of Obsidian. The last thing I wanted to mention just out of the bat is what happens when, or what we saw when we first opened our notes, which is the graph. The graph is another really cool thing about Obsidian because this is a visual representation of all of your links. So in this case, we see how welcome again is linked to goodbye. However, if I were to create a note that says, I'm here, but I don't link it to anything and I open my graph again, suddenly I'm here is a little island. But let's say I want to link I'm here to welcome again. I would do the double brackets, welcome again, oops, welcome again. I go here, I go to welcome again. Ooh, I'm connected to goodbye. And then I go there. And how you can see how quickly you start creating links and chains, right? And so if we go back to our graph, suddenly welcome again is linked to both I'm here and goodbye. But let's say I want to link goodbye to another note and I want to create it directly from this note that I'm in. Let's say I want to do until we see each other again, right? If you notice, this link is a little darker than this link. And if I go over here into my graph view, you'll notice this link, once again, is a little lighter than this link. One of the really cool things about Obsidian is that you can create placeholder notes. And so let's say you want to create this note, but you don't have anything to say about it yet. You're just putting it there because you don't want to forget. And then let's say I'm over here at welcome again, and I say, I wonder if I have something about seeing each other. And I write C. And suddenly this one comes in on the autocomplete. Then I can go ahead and put this here. And if, let's say, I'm ready to create this note right now, I just click into this until we see each other again is a new note. Woo! And if I, for example, would go into the graph view, you'll notice that it is already tied to the other ones because I had already created this note, even though it wasn't an active one in goodbye. And so that's how you can end up creating really interesting things in your Obsidian through links and through the graph view. Of course, the graph view will sometimes get a little bit intense. It can get really, really difficult to navigate sometimes once you start creating a lot of notes. So something a lot of people use is the local graph. So right off the bat, if you hit Command or Control P, that's going to open your command options, right? So if you hit Command O, that opens, it's open, right? Your quick switcher. That'll go through any of the notes that you have, or you can create a note directly from here, right? So let's say I want to create a new note. Command O or Control O if you're on a PC. And let's say I want to create a note that says, what? Time is a construct, right? If there was anything called time is a construct in here, it would show up on the quick switcher. So for example, I want to make a note on goodbye. Oh, actually, I already have one, right? So that's another really cool thing. That's how about we make it just time for now and create a note, and there it is. So that's another way that you can create a note. But let's say, for example, going back over here to until we see no, let's do welcome again because this one has a couple of links. So if we go into welcome again and we want to look at the local graph, we can open the command panel by again clicking Command or Control P, and that opens your command panel, which are basically actions that you can take in your Obsidian. And I want to say open local graph. And what this does is, of course, right now, all of these links, it's just 5 of them or however many they are. It's very little. You could use the regular graph. But eventually, when you have a lot of notes, it's very powerful to be able to use the local graph because it's only going to show you the links that you have to this one note. So I want to show you what that looks like on my Obsidian, for example. So if it went into my graph, this is what my graph looks like right now. And I do have a couple of filters and stuff like that, which I can later get into when the time is right. But since this is a beginner type situation, I don't want to get too crazy. Um, and I wanted to look about like Japan, for example. I can see that fairly easy because again, I only have really 528 notes. And in the Zettelkasten section, which is what this really is feeding, I only have 271. So even here, it's not that crazy. You can see a bunch of these light notes, which are the ones that aren't actually notes yet. So that's another way that you can kind of see that. Let's say I wanted to look up Japan, but there's way too many things here. If I go specifically into Japan history, which is a fairly new note, there's hardly anything in it. And I look at my local graph, which you can see down here, but I'm going to go ahead and Command P, local graph. This is much easier to look at because it's just the links that are going into here. But then let's say I go into Japan. Now I have all of the links that are linking to Japan. I could do the same thing over here. You can see Japan over here, but there's a bunch of stuff that can also clutter your brain space. So if the graph is ever too overwhelming, you can go into your local graph, and that makes it a lot easier. What's really cool about the local graph is that if you go over here into filters, you have this depth option. Right now, it's just going through the links that are directly related to Japan. However, if I open up the depth, then suddenly I have links one level over. So anything that's connected to Japan, what's connected to that? And so that can create really powerful moments of serendipity with certain ideas. So lots of cool things that you can do with the graph. That's pretty much what I wanted to share about that so far. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to terminology is properties. But I'm going to talk about that once we actually get some stuff going on in this vault. So this is what a vault looks like right off the bat. Like we talked about, there was only one note when we first got here, which was the welcome note. We've already created a few of them here. Let's say I create a new note called time is a construct, right? And I want to link this to time, of course, because that's the topic. I'm just going to link that there just to have a couple of things here. Very cool. So we have a couple of notes. My recommendation is always just start creating notes when you first get your vault. A lot of the times you can get stuck. I know I did with the actual setup and how it looks like or how it's organized, but really you should start using it, just creating notes and seeing what notes you're creating, what you want to use it for. Something that I would consider is or think about is what kind of notes you want to keep in your vault before you even start creating folders, right? Is it just ideas, concepts, kind of like keeping a Zettelkasten in or commonplace type notes? Do you want to keep reference information for manuals or important links, important dates that are related to yourself and your life, utilitarian type information? Are you wanting to use it heavily for memory keeping or journaling or time based notes? Those are things that you should really consider when you're thinking about how you're going to use your Obsidian or what you want to use it for. For me, for example, it was hard at first to figure out how I wanted to set up the vault because I primarily wanted it as a knowledge hub or sort of like a commonplace slash Zettelkasten kind of thing. But there were notes that I created sometimes that really didn't fit into that system. And so I created a bunch of folders and it created points of friction. So we want to have the least amount of friction as possible if you can help it. So one thing I did want to show you, I came across this as I was prepping for this video. I actually have really, really cool. So I opened up here the folders. I have an older version of my Obsidian, and you can see all of my old notes in here. So let me show you my current Obsidian so you can compare. So right now, as you can see, move this over so it's a little easier. I have the inbox, the Zettelkasten, my kind of like outputs folder. This is a new one, this physical collections one. It's something I'm still working on. Reference and calendar notes, and then this utilities. This is a very early version, right, that you can see here of my Obsidian. You can see it was September of 2024. So I had these folders: source material, tags, indexes, templates, notes, CMXEV, and daily notes. And so source material then had a bunch of other folders: articles, attachments, books, people, podcast quotes, videos. And then in tags, I had just a bunch of different tags. Indexes was supposed to be kind of like my reference material, if you will. Templates were where I kept templates. Notes were just kind of random or what would become kind of like what you would call evergreen notes or Zettles or stuff like that. That's kind of like what this was going to be. But you can see here perennial philosophy. This is one that I wasn't sure if it belonged here in the notes section or if it belonged in the tag section or things like that. So these type of like this folder system created a lot of tension for me. It was really, really difficult. I do not recommend that you go in and create all this kind of, all of these millions of folders. I really recommend that you keep it as simple as you can as you start and kind of see how it is that you work through things. Because for me, for example, at this point with my actual Obsidian, I've realized after a lot of work that I wanted to have my Zettelkasten just kind of be in one area and there's no real folders in this section. It's just maps and people. And then I have references where I keep all of my stuff that's kind of like second brain adjacent, that's more utilitarian in nature. And calendar notes is where I keep all of my daily notes. Then I have utilities and stuff like that where I keep templates and attachments and stuff. But I only really came up with this through use and through creating more notes and kind of understanding what it is that I wanted to do with my system. So don't go too crazy creating a bunch of folders. Here's what I recommend you start with just to get the ball rolling, if you will. So my recommendation is that you create an inbox folder. I usually do the plus, but it could be inbox or you can call it whatever you want. I recommend having a notes folder. Oop, I created a new note instead. Sure. I recommend doing a notes folder. You can, of course, name this whatever you want. I created another note again. Oh, goodness. We'll delete this one. New folder. Calendar, or it could be journal. I have mine as calendar notes on mine, but of course you can make it journal. I'm going to do calendar just to keep it calendar notes. And then I would recommend a utilities folder. And utilities would be where you keep things like attachments, put that in there, and templates. right? So we have those two things in there, calendar notes and notes. Now, you'll notice that on mine, for example, I have numbers because I want to keep it in a specific order. So if that's something that you would like to do as well, I like having my calendar notes towards the bottom, my utilities at last, my regular notes, and my inbox on top, which is why I have the plus sign. So that's something else to keep in mind if you would like to. So, for example, if you wanted to do that, we would just rename this to calendar notes 5. Let's say our regular notes are 3. And these are just random numbers. I you can see they don't really have in mine any rhyme or reason. It's because I keep renumbering and shuffling things around, and I tend to associate certain numbers then after a while with certain folders. I don't know. It's weird. I know. But it's your system. That's the beauty of it. Okay, so then all of these notes, technically, because they're all just random notes, would go into the notes section. So we're gonna put them in there. But let's say, for example, you don't actually new note. We haven't really linked to anything, so I'm gonna put this in the inbox. Time isn't linked to anything, so I'm gonna put that in the inbox. And until we see each other again, isn't really linked to anything as well. So notes, these notes are ones that we've linked, so we have them in our folder, and these notes still need to be worked on, so we're going to keep them in the inbox. So this is what I recommend that you do to start with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 folders, and then from there kind of see how it feels and how to go from there. So that's how to first start getting this set up. Next, I want to talk about settings. I didn't realize that my viewfinder was still there. So apologies about the navigator, but these are the folders, like I mentioned. The notes that don't have any links get put in the inbox, and the notes that did have links get moved into their respective location. So to go into settings, what we would go is down here, this little gear, and these are your settings. So everything in general, based off of the way that I've updated my settings, I haven't done any changes to general at all, and I haven't done any changes to editor either. So I haven't done any changes at all to that. um so to start with, you can go ahead and leave that as is. For files and links, what I would recommend you do is, I have my confirm file deletion off, but you can keep that on if you would like. I would toggle on this section here called automatically update internal links. What that means is that if you are working on a note and you rename a link inside of it, it will rename all of the instances of that link. And I like that to update automatically across the entire vault, just to make sure that I don't end up creating duplicate notes or things like that. It just kind of all works a little bit more seamlessly. And then the other thing I would do is go over here to default location for new notes. I would default the location to a specified folder, and I would make that the inbox. So any new note you create automatically goes into your inbox. And then I would also go down here to default location for new attachments, and I would go over here again to same folder, in a folder specified below, and then I would go to the utilities wherever you have them and attachments. So I have a folder for my attachments. You don't have to, but that just makes things a little bit cleaner. So now any single time that you add an image, a video, or any sort of attachment into your Vault, they will all be located in your attachments folder. And let me show you what that looks like, for example, on mine. So if we're using the just regular folder navigation from your operating system, if I go over here, I know that my attachments are located in my utilities. These are all of the attachments for my Vault. All of them are in here, very easy to find. They are within the notes themselves, but if I ever want to find them in here, they're all in one single folder. So it's very, very useful to have them that way. So that's what I would do for this section for files and links. I wouldn't change anything else really, at least not to start with. Next up, we have appearance. And so here is where you would basically change how it looks. When I first started, I used the Anapuchin theme. So let's go ahead and go into themes over here to manage. And you have a bunch of options for different themes. So I was using the Anapuchin theme. Right now, I'm using minimal theme, but you can pick whichever one you prefer. I did for a while use Sanctum as well. I really like that one. Let's do Anapuchin. Okay, so now that we've installed a few themes, I'm going to go ahead and X out of here. And then you can see here, if you go back to this theme section, that you have a couple of options that you can choose from. Let's do Obsidian Nord for now. And then I'll show you what you can do even more so later on with the theme once we get to plugins. But you could also change your interface font if you would like. Like, let's say there's Arial. And then this, of course, is based off of whatever fonts you have in your system. So there we go. I just changed that over to Fira Mono. It's one of my favorite fonts. And then let's see if I close here, you can see that this doesn't change because you have interface font and then you have actual note fonts. So that's just something to keep in mind. If I wanted to change the text font as well, I would just come in here and change that as well here. And now that one is also Fira code. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much, change whatever it is that you want in the appearance section. It's pretty self-explanatory there, but really all I would look at right now is just change your theme if you would like to. If you didn't want to change your theme and you just want to kept it to default, but you wanted to change this purple, what you could do is just change the color here, and that would change your accent color. But let's go ahead and do Obsidian Nord for now. There. Cool. We're going to go ahead and skip through hotkeys. Hotkeys basically are shortcuts. So this is something that I didn't use very much in the beginning, but have been using more and more lately. So that's why I say just go ahead and skip it for now. You don't really need to do anything with it. For core plugins, I would keep everything the same, except for two things. At least compared to mine, right? If you want to record, like do little voice notes, I would add audio recorder. I have mine on in mine. I also have footnotes view in mind, but you don't have to do anything to that. I would leave everything the same. The only thing I would change, so if you want to use the plugin that I'm going to recommend, then I would go ahead and just take off your daily notes from here. But the daily notes option, native Obsidian is very, very good. So if you don't want to take that off, just leave it there. For community plugins, what I would like you to do is go ahead and turn on community plugins. So we're going to go ahead and turn on. If you ever want to take off community plugins, you would need to turn on restricted mode. We don't want to do that. We want to have the ability to get community plugins. So go ahead and turn that on and then leave this for now. I want to go through these kind of like core plugins and show you what you want to add or not add to start with. So over here, you're going to want to do, I would recommend highly to show backlinks at the bottom of the note. What that does is, let's see here. Okay, I was confused as to why it wasn't showing. I had to just close them and open a new tab. So what that does is that now you have your linked mentions down here. So if you don't want this down here, then you would just go ahead and remove this, but I do quite enjoy having this here. Every other core plugin, I would just leave as is for the time being. The command palette, if you want to have, so when you do command P, like let's see here, right here, command P, you get all of these. If you wanted to have pinned commands, then you could right here add them. So like, for example, if you want to have like save current file as a pinned command, then you will see that it's right there. So that's one option that you have. Daily notes. So if you were to use just the native daily notes page, this is what, you would choose where your daily notes are going to go. And in this case, we wanted to go to calendar notes. And here you could pick your template. I'll show you that in a second. And then you can choose, of course, to open your daily note on startup. So that means that once you turn on or open your Obsidian, you would automatically go into your daily note. And then you have your date format here. If you want to switch that, you can. So let's say you want to do month, day, year, you can do that. But I quite like having the year first. And I will show you some really cool naming functions that you can use to automatically create folders for your daily notes once we get to the actual plugin. Then I don't have anything different in file recovery, so you can leave that as is. I don't have anything different in note composer, so I would also just say, leave that as is. Page preview as well, quick stitcher as well. I would not, you get to choose that, right? But if you were to go ahead and click this, then what that means is that once you hit Command or Control O to open your quick switcher, you're only going to be able to search through any actually existing notes. So, for example, let me go ahead and click that, right? And let's say I see here time, and I want to say time is in illusion, right? But I don't want to actually link to that. And then let's say I want to link to time as a construct. Okay. So let's say I go ahead and open my quick switcher. So Command or Control O, and I start typing time. You'll see here I have time as a construct, and I'm here. But because I clicked that I don't want to have, and I only want to see existing files, I don't see that I have time as an illusion as a possible option. I like keeping that off because then if I go over here and I go time, now I can see, oh, this is a placeholder note that I have. I can create this note. And now I've created it, right? And so I would prefer keeping it on. So you can choose to add that or not. You could also choose to have attachments show up in the quick switcher. Sync is only applicable if you have Obsidian sync, so you can go ahead and skip that if not. And templates is where you would actually select your template folder location. So in this case, we do have a templates folder, so we're going to go ahead and click that. You would adjust your date format here and your time format if you would like to. So that is basically what I would do if I was just starting off with my Obsidian with the folders and then also with the settings. The next thing I want to show you is plugins. What plugins do I think you should download? So we're going to go back to community plugins and I'm going to create a video. It might already be up, but if it is, I will link it up above, but if not, it will be coming shortly. That goes through all of the plugins that I have and my experiences with those plugins. But for now, I just want to tell you which ones I think are really good to have right off the bat. So we would go to settings again, go to community plugins and hit browse. And the ones we're going to download are Templater, right here, by Silent Void. Install and enable. We're going to download Setting Search over here by Jeremy Valentine. Install and enable. Then we're going to download Natural Language Dates by Argentina Ortega Signs. Install, enable. Smart Typography. Install, enable. And then finally, even if you're not going to use this right now, I do recommend just downloading it data view. So those are the plugins that I think that you should download. And I will explain why that is. So I'm going to close out here and I'm going to go to community plugins and kind of explain to you what these things do. Okay, so let's start with Templater. I'm not going to go into crazy detail as to what you can do with this. I will make a separate video for that, but it is definitely a really good plugin to have in your plugin stash, if you will. Smart typography is just a way to, because this is a markdown file, there are certain formatting things that just come along with it. So this is just a way for you to have basically automatic format changes. So like for example, with arrows, if I have this off or I didn't have smart typography and I do that, then it just is the two symbols like that. But if I have the arrows selected, then it go ahead and converts it into a arrow. And that's just a little tiny thing. But I quite enjoy having it. It's the same way that, the quotes, it automatically changes them to these instead of the default. Ellipses, 3 periods will be converted to an ellipses. I don't have that one on, so you can go ahead and choose to use that or not. And in the same way I have here, like for example, less than or equal to, we usually have this, but if you have the smart typography and you have that on, then you can go ahead and automatically changes the style of the symbol. So that's kind of like what smart typography does. Again, this is not a necessary plugin, but it is a good one to have in my opinion, just for formatting. In the same way with fractions, if you want to have it so that fractions are automatically converted, then you can do that. Natural language dates is something that I think it's really, really good. So date format, week start, you can do whatever your week start is. In my case, I prefer 1 week start on Monday, so I went ahead and did that. You can have your time formatting, and then if you enable date auto suggest and add dates as links and have this be your trigger, what that does is that when you do today, then this creates an automatic link to the daily note. I use this a lot. I also use time Now, a lot for my first songs. So if you know me, I keep track of my media log through first songs. So I use the time now quite a lot, quite often. And then yeah, today it automatically links to the note. And when we have daily notes or calendar notes, that's really, really useful. At least in my case, because I really like being aware of the passage of time. So that's just one of those things that I quite enjoy. So that is what natural language states does. And then the other plugin that we installed that isn't here, I'll come over here to show you, is setting search. And basically, without this, there's no way for you to search your settings. And I quite like being able to search in my settings. I think it is extremely useful. So you turn that on, and let's say I'm looking for, I don't know, let's say templates, any instance of template. Now I can see all of the instances here, and it's so much easier than having to go through all of these trying to look for it. So I think that that one is probably one of the most important ones just for ease. And then the last one is data view. And data view, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and enable JavaScript queries and inline queries. You don't have to do that. I just like having it right from the get go. And there's nothing else that I really change in here. Aside from that, I don't do any task management in Obsidian, so I can't really help on that front. But there is a section for that with data view. And basically, data view, if you are new here and you haven't seen my channel, data views is what I use. Let's go ahead and remove the local graph to do things like this, right? So in my daily notes, I keep track of the media that I'm consuming, for example, and that gets rolled up into my weekly note. I do have a video where I talk about this a little bit because I did this all in July, my July wrap up for Obsidian. If you are interested in watching that, I'll leave that linked up above. But basically, data view are queries that you can use to then pick up what you put in your Obsidian and view it in a different way. So, for example, I have a peoples of interest map of contents, very much inspired by Nick Milo. And basically, what this does, this is creating a table, right? Looking for my entire Obsidian vault. That's what these little things says. Is this is looking for my entire Obsidian vault, where collections contains people. Collections is my property that has what I'm looking for. So if I go into one of these people, for example, let's go to Cody Cook. You'll see here I have a collections property. We haven't talked about properties yet. I'm going to get to that before we finish the end of the video. But I have a collections property, and I put people as one of the options, and so that's what this data view is looking for. And I'm telling it to exclude certain folders because I don't want those to get picked up in here. And I am sorting it by date ascending. And so all of those get put in here because I also have dates in there. That's what I'm looking for. I can now see all of my people notes with their respective dates and the amount of links, because that's also something that I'm looking at here in the table columns. Um, and this is one way to be able to view that information. Data view. It's just different views for the data that you are inputting into your Obsidian. And so this here is bases, which is a whole other thing altogether. And it's still not available, I think, to the public. So I'm not going to get too much into bases. But this is an example of what I use data view as well, not just in my daily notes, but also to find different ways to look at the same amount of information, especially if you're talking about idea building or Zettelkasten or things like that. So even if you're not going to start with data view, because it is something that's a little bit more, it can get a little bit more advanced. I would suggest to download it just to have it. Oh, actually, so there is a plugin called Style Settings. I recommend you do install that one because depending on what themes you have options to customize it even more so. So this theme doesn't have style setting options. However, if I were to change this to Anapuchin, for example, and I go to style settings, now I can go here and do a bunch of changes to a lot of different things. So I can change this, I can change this, I can do the different accents, for example. One really cool thing that I used to do when I first started, oh, that's the dark one. Let me go to latte again. When I first started was, let's see, where is it? Code blocks, preview, integration, color palette. Was it here? Where was it? Rainbow folders. So I had rainbow folders, and you can see here Right here, how it does that. I love the rainbow folders quite a lot. Style settings for some themes are like the world is your oyster, essentially. Like right now, mine that I use is minimal, and that one does also have style settings. So that's another plugin that I would recommend you download just to see if the theme that you're using has options to further customize your Obsidian. So I'm going to change it back to Obsidian North just to keep it simple. And I mentioned earlier that I was going to show you a different plugin for daily notes, but I think I'm going to put that in a separate video because I do think that right off the bat you can utilize the native daily notes very, very well. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave the daily notes here. Use this one for now, and I'm going to make a separate video on how to set up the daily notes plugin that I use on my Obsidian currently. But for now, this one works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and open a daily note, which as you can see here, we do have a ribbon with a few different things. This opens the quick switcher, which is basically control open, which gives you the option to open up different notes. This is your graph. This is a canvas. This is a thing that I don't use very much just yet. I am thinking of different ways that I can utilize this, but essentially, this is a type of note that you can basically add things to. So you can add this note here. It's a visual way of looking at your notes. You can add images. It's basically an infinite canvas, if you will, where you can just visualize create maps and such like that. I don't use this very much yet, so I don't have much experience with it, but it's a very cool tool. Here, you would open your daily note. This is if you want to insert a template, as you can see. This opens the command palette. This is your start and stop recording, and this is templater. So if you hit here to open a daily note, it's just blank. But let's say you want to have certain things that you want to put in your daily note. So like maybe there are certain things that you want to track, and that's where properties come into the picture. So since we want to do a daily note template and I want to explain to you what properties are, we've finally reached that portion. So we're going to do both of them together. So because this is the first time that you're using properties, there's not really anything here. So we're going to go into our command palette just to make it simple. Command P or Control P. And then we're going to look for properties and we're going to view file properties. There is a way for you to do this using source mode, but I just want to make it a little bit simpler for those of you that don't have much coding experience. So now you see that we have this section here called add property. We're going to click on that. And then let's say that you want to track wake up time, which is something that I track in my daily notes. So let's go ahead and name that wake up. Suddenly we have this section and it makes it a lot easier because now you can add properties through here. If ever you don't want to look at your properties on this page and you just want to have it in your sidebar, you can always either toggle it or you can go into your settings, search up properties, properties and document, which is under your editor. So you could also just directly go into your editor and make it hidden, and then you no longer see it on your page or on your note. It's just on the sidebar. In my case, I do quite like seeing it, so I'm going to make it visible. You also have the option of only seeing it in source mode. So I'll talk about that a little bit later just so that you guys can see what it is. But for now, it's here. So let's say I want to see wake up time, and if you click in here, you could also do it directly up here. You'll see that it says property type, and we have different options. In this case, I want it to be a text document or a text property rather. So let's say something else I want to put on my daily note is whether I did morning pages. So morning pages, and I want this to be a checkbox. So I went ahead and changed it to that. And let's say I want to track the weather, which is again is something that I do as well. Then let's say this was 79 Fahrenheit, right? And then let's say I woke up today at 8, and let's say I did morning pages. Cool. And then you would write your daily note stuff here. So let me actually show you what I have in mine. So I have my media log, my life notes and musing, my free writing section, and then my notes navigation. So here is what my data view query looks like for my dates created today data view. Basically, it's data view, and then I have it as a table, and the columns are tags and collections because those are two properties that I use in my Obsidian. From would mean that it's picking up from all of my vault because this is empty, where the date format is the c file.cday, which is basically the creation date for the file. So the creation date matches or is equal to the date on the date title on my daily note. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. So let's go ahead and put this in. I'm just going to paste that. And suddenly we have all of the notes that we created today. Super cool. So I'm going to go ahead and have it be, I'm going to remove this because we don't have tags and we don't have collections on this vault. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that there. And so let's say I want to add a free writing section in here. One way that you can add headings is through these hashtags. So your main hashtag will be heading 1, and then you have heading 2, and then you have heading 3, for example, and they all nest into each other. So if I go ahead and close this, heading 3 and heading 2, so like I could go here and say notes created today, and that way when I close up here, it doesn't pick this up, right? So that's one way that you can use headings. But then I'm going to go ahead and put here free writing. This is an example. And then let's go ahead and make this a header. So let's do notes created today, which would make it so that now it doesn't have the little, there we go. So now instead of it being in that little call box, it's just outside and with its own header. So those are two ways that you can use that. Okay, cool. So let's say this is your template, right? This is what you decided that you wanted to do. If you were to create a brand new daily note, I didn't think about it before because I was gonna do something different. But if you are gonna use daily notes natively, my recommendation is that you download this plugin called Calendar. So if you go over here, I've already downloaded because I didn't realize I wasn't recording, so I have to go back and do it. But if you go over here and type in Calendar, this plugin by Liam Kane once you download it, it will allow you to have this little widget down over here on the side. So what's really cool about this one is that you have the option to select however many amount of words will produce a dot. So let's say I wanted to use 10 as my every 10 words there's a dot. Now you can see there's 3, so I have 30 words on this note at least. A lot of people don't like that, so just keep that in mind with this particular plugin, but that's a really cool use case. I already changed this to be starting on Monday. I am gonna help confirm before creating a note. I don't really need that. And I did add the week numbers. That way you can create weekly notes, and there's options for here as well. So we already went through creating this note, but if I were to go in and create a new note over here on the daily note, then you'll notice that it didn't do anything. And it's because we don't have a template created for this. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to create a new note. And I'm going to call it daily note template. Right. And then because we already did this work, I don't want to have to do it all over again. But if I were to just select here through reading view, I'm not going to be able to select the properties. So this is a really cool way or a really good use case for when you would want to get the source view. So if we go over here and do source mode, then you'll see that it's exactly that. It's showing you the YAML version of this note. So we can go ahead and copy all of that. I'm going to get out of source view now. Go over here to daily template and paste it. I am going to go ahead and delete everything that we added because this is a template, so you want to keep it as empty as possible. And then now that we've created daily note template, and we need to move it out of the inbox. So we're going to move it into templates. When we first started working with our settings, we told Obsidian that templates was going to be the folder where these existed. So what we're going to do now, and you'll see that it already happened because I have already done this, but you would go to daily notes and you would select your template location. So in this case, it would have been like this. You go here and you say daily note template. This is the template that I want to use when I create a daily note. So now let's go ahead and close this out. If I were to create a note for a new day, now it's using the template as specified. So that's really, really cool. And because we told it that we want calendar notes to or daily notes to go into this calendar notes folder, they're all in there. They're not clogging any of the other folders. So let's go ahead and create one more template just to show you the capabilities. So let's say we want to create a general notes template. And of course, you can call these whatever you want. I just like having template in the name. And since we don't have any properties in here, if we go over here to the sidebar, and we can also reorganize this. So let's say, for example, the way that I have mine, I like having it split view. So I have the backlinks separately, and then this is the headings. I have this over here as well. So you can also rearrange this. I like having my calendar first, and then I like having the tags in the middle with the properties. Cool. So this icon shows you all properties that you've ever created. This one shows you the properties for the specific file that you're on. So let's go ahead and add a property of the tags. And then I would also want to add, let's say, related. And again, I had already created this, so excuse me, but let's say we did related. Something that I wanted to mention, let me just show you wake up as an example. Let's say I did this 8, right? I can't do anything but that. And that's because this is a property type of text. If you want a property that allows you to do multiple things or add multiple options to it, you want to change it to be a list type. So that's something to keep in mind with properties. Okay. And then let's say I want to add connections as something that I want to put in my general note, for example, right? Let's go ahead and do that. Cool. So if I wanted to create a new note, right? We did a new note here, new note for now. And I want to add a template to this. This is a really good way for you to use hotkeys, right? Like we talked about earlier, you find things that you want to do or different ways for your system to evolve through use. So let's go ahead and put template. And of course, I had already added this hotkey, but you would see that it's blank. Look for insert template and add a hotkey. In this case, I made it this particular set of keys. So if I go over here to new note and I do that template or that hotkey, I have the option to insert a template into this note, but general note isn't in here. Why? It's because we told Obsidian again that templates exist in this particular folder, and right now it's still living in the inbox. So let's go ahead and move that into the templates. And now if we go ahead and do that hotkey again, you'll see that general notes template is there as an option. So let's go ahead and add that in. And now we have our template and it's ready for us to use. So let's say I want to make this time is of the essence, right? And I want to say this is related to time. So I'm going to go ahead and open bracket. And now I have an option to go through all of my notes and see if anything comes up, or I can start typing. And then let me say I want to add this to time, right? I could also add connections down here or wherever. It doesn't matter where you add it. Let's say I want to do time is a construct, right? But I also want to add time as a construct up here. In what case would you want to have it in both places? Well, right now it's very easy to see it, but if I were to add a bunch of information, let's say, here it's very easy for me to see that these are connected here. But then if I'm scrolling down, I don't have to scroll back up to see it. I also have an option to put it down here. Just to say that don't be afraid to put the same link in multiple places in your note, wherever it is that you feel it belongs or that you want to put it in. If I open my local graph here, you'll see that even though time is a construct is linked in two places, it's still just one link on the local graph. So you're not going to muddy anything by adding multiple links on one place. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes you'll want to link something up here. Sometimes you'll want to link it down here or in the body of the note. It doesn't matter. And it's okay if you do it in multiple places. So like with folders, my suggestion is that you just start creating notes and seeing what it is that you want to add to them before you start creating templates. And that way, when you create a template, you know that it's one that you are needing or that you're using quite often. Of course, no harm, no foul. You can always just delete the note if you don't need it later on, but that's just something to keep in mind. And then I just wanted to show you what it looked like to add an attachment. So right now I'm just dragging this from my navigator. And there's my attachment. And I just wanted to show you that because now you'll see that it's in this folder, in the attachment folder, because we told Obsidian that that's where we wanted attachments to go. So just FYI, even though the file itself lives in the attachment, it is still viewable on the note that you added to. And then it's just added here as a link, if you will. And if you go and click on that link, it takes you to the actual note that houses it. So that's pretty much what you will need, in my opinion, based off my experience, to start with Obsidian and kind of start creating a flow for yourself in a way that is not super overwhelming. At least I hope that it wasn't very overwhelming. We went through how it is that you open a vault, how it is that you can create a couple of folders just to get started, the ones that I think are pretty much the bare minimum that you would need to get started. We looked at settings and community plugins that you can utilize to start with, and we looked at templates and how to use those as well as properties to start linking things together. And if we were to go into our graph right now, look at all these notes that we've created and kind of link to each other, right? So we have our note templates, we have our 2 daily notes that we created, both templates here, and there are ways for you to filter this out later, but that's for another video. And then we have welcome again, linking to until we see each other again, and goodbye, and I'm here. And then we have time, linking to time is an illusion, time is a construct, time is of the essence. And perhaps I wanted to, you know, time is a construct and time is an illusion. I feel like those two should go together, right? So time is an illusion. And if we go into the graph, now that looks different here. Now we see that time is linking to time is a construct and time is an illusion. But then time is of the essence. And maybe there's something that we can do with time as a construct and until we see each other again, right? Maybe there's a link here somewhere. And so that's how you would use your graph for that kind of viewing, if you will. I really am a proponent of just using the system as best you can, but sometimes it can be a little overwhelming when you don't know the basis of how the system works, or how things live, or sometimes it's good to have a little bit of structure even if you're just starting out. So I hope that was informative, that it was easy to follow. I really come at this from a point of a hobbyist. I don't really live in the realm of PKM or tech life, although it is something that I'm interested in. I don't really live in that niche. My niche is obviously more of like the journaling and creative practice area of things. And so that's how I would set up my Obsidian as a creative person, artist slash writer. And what I think is necessary to get started, just based off of what I've learned after using Obsidian for a year now. In the next couple of weeks, I will be releasing other videos. I'm currently working on them. One of them is going to be showcasing all of the plugins that I have in my Obsidian. So showing you, aside from the ones that I showed in this video, which I think are really good beginner plugins, I will also show you all of the plugins that I currently have installed, and also take a look at some of the ones that I've installed and no longer use, and why it is that I don't use them, but they could possibly be good alternatives for you. I'm also going to create a video where I showcase what daily note plugin I'm currently using and how I set up my daily notes, my weekly notes, my monthly notes, and my yearly notes so that they roll up into each other. That's going to take a look at things like data view and other things like that. So those are just some of the videos that I'm going to be making that are more tutorial based for Obsidian. If there are any other questions that you have, or something else that you would like me to kind of deep dive into or have questions about, so go ahead and leave those in the comments, and I will either link you to a video in the meantime or put it on my list to get them done. I hope that you were able to get something from this video, and if nothing else, that it was at least entertaining. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you've made it this far, go ahead and let me know in the comments by posting a tech-related emoji. And thank you so much. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!